interview with KL, and we are rolling for our first take. We're in the middle of COVID-19 lockdown and the middle of Holy Week for both Western and Eastern Christians, and also in the middle of Passover for our Jewish friends. And it's great to be here with KL today and to listen to KL's story, growing up Jewish in Australia, the difference between faith and custom in Jewish life. Welcome, KL.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Would you like to just give me a bit more information about how you came to be in Australia and your life?
Sure. I grew up in Caulfield, the Bible Belt, the Jewish belt of Melbourne, and went to a school in East St Kilda called Beth Rivka Ladies College, which is an all-girls Jewish Orthodox school. My brothers went to the yeshiva, which is just around the corner. It's the all-boys school. And I think, you know, with the plethora of opportunities that's provided me, private schooling was a good option that my parents took. The one drawback from that was the religious aspect of Judaism lost a lot of its patina for me. I enjoyed the cultural aspect of Judaism, the connecting with families, the connecting over food and celebrations and things like that. But what I found was the religious aspect was quite difficult for me to as a feminist. It was very hard for me to kind of accept a lot of what was happening in the religious side of things. So when I was in my teens, I kind of walked away from Judaism as a religion, and still to this day call myself a cultural Jew. I don't think I will ever lose that identity of being Jewish, but it has shifted significantly.
Your mother came from Canada originally.
Yes.
So she met your father in Canada?
Yeah, my father was traveling kind of gap year style, but in his 20s, doing a little bit of traveling, and he found my mum and they met and married in 7 weeks. And so he came back to Australia to a fairly orthodox family. My grandfather used to go to synagogue every Friday night. He'd actually go every day to synagogue, but you know, the Sabbath, the Friday night was a given. He was always there. But my dad came back with a wife and no one knew anything about her. My mum was brought up, again, also traditional Jew, but she was also brought up with Christmas alongside Hanukkah, Easter alongside Passover. All of those holidays were celebrated together. Yeah, I guess it was different for her.
And so you grew up without the Christian tradition, without Christmas and Easter, or do your mum still try to put some of those into it?
None of that existed. I brought those traditions, those customs in when I had a child, because I felt one of the things when I was growing up was as a Jewish child in a Jewish community, it was fine to not have those trappings, those other holidays, the Christmas and the Easter and all of that. Sure, we missed out on getting chocolate, but you know, we offset things. There are traditions during Passover that mean that we don't miss out on things. We just get different things. The change came for me when I had a child, about 20 years ago, when I had a stepchild, and we decided as parents that it was, you know, unfair to not have those things for the child. So I celebrated my Christmas about 20 years ago.
If we go back to your childhood, how was Passover when you were growing up, when your father was alive and as a family together?
Wow. Well, I think, you know, when you look at it, my dad was one of 4 children, each of whom had a number of children themselves, and he was the youngest boy, but the third of the 4 children. His sister had 3 children. His older brother had 5 children, and the other older brother had 2, but they were living in New Zealand at the time. During Passovers, whoever was in the country, whoever was in the city would come and join us at the table. Usually my grandparents, my aunt, my uncles, aunt and uncles, cousins, sometimes their other cousins from the other side of the family. So we just have these great big smush gatherings. 20, 25, 30 people was not uncommon. And that was 2 nights in a row. So Seder night for Passover would happen 2 nights in a row. So you'd have 20 to 30 people, 2 nights in a row, lots of food left over. So you didn't actually have to worry about cooking for the rest of the 8 days, but you'd cook for 3 or 4 days beforehand.
And of course, in our current situation, we're limited to our immediate households, no traveling, no religious events, Christian, Jewish, Orthodox, whatever it might be. How do you think, or how are other Jewish families in your own family coping in this time of lockdown?
We gathered last night with my family in Darwin, and I think that was actually really a successful time to have a Zoom dinner, as we called it. It wasn't a fast dinner, it was on Zoom though. And my friends on Facebook are all lamenting the fact that some of them who are 20-something-year-olds who are living with share households can't get to their families. So they're creating space within their home with non-Jewish participants. I guess the beauty of this particular holiday is everyone is welcome at the table. It doesn't matter what faith you come from, because during the Passover Seder, you tell the story. And so everyone feels included because you go around the table and everyone has a portion to read. It's not defined, but you kind of go around the table and everyone reads a little bit and you hear the story and you're involved. So I guess it doesn't really matter what faith you come from. You do get a sense of being able to participate in some way. And so, seeing my friends have their Seder in their shared household is really, really pleasing for me, because it means that there's still connection for them. I know my mum feels quite disconnected when she can't gather with family, and so that was the purpose behind last night. Was really good to be able to have dinner together and eat some of our traditional foods together. My brother had his big family Seder the night before with the other side of the family, with his partner's family, and again via Zoom, because they're in Newcastle, in Darwin, in Melbourne, in everywhere. So it all had to be done by Zoom. But normally people would travel most likely up to Darwin for these events. I know my dad used to go every second year. It was his favourite time of year to go up with Passover in Darwin. So it's very different this year.
Very different. As you know, we were going to do a show for Channel 31 this evening with 5 members of different faiths all gathered together and having a shared discussion to see how the festivals worked together at this time of them all being celebrated. And I think perhaps we might do that later in the year and to share the 5 experiences of how people spent Passover, Easter, Holy Week, Orthodox Easter. It may be interesting to come back and to listen to people's stories when and if we're ever out of lockdown. So, how was it getting the food, or did you have to make do with your food for this Passover?
So it was around the time that the police kind of said, non-essential travel outside of the house. You can go out for groceries and things like that. And I went, well, I actually had to travel to Melbourne, which I would not like to do, because as I'm not sure if the viewers are aware, I live in Ballarat. There's not exactly a huge cultural community out here of Jewish people, and the local supermarkets don't have things like matzah, which is the flatbread, the unleavened bread, and they don't have the gefilte fish or the special wines or grape juices or things like that that we would normally just go to the shops in Caulfield and get. So I had to make a special trip down to Melbourne on Tuesday. What I had done was call a friend of mine who's local to Caulfield and say, hey, can you do me a favour and shop to this list? I don't care what it costs, just shop to the list and I will PayPal you and send you the money and we'll do a contactless delivery the next day. And she did. She was fantastic. She did the shopping for us on the Monday night and we went down on Tuesday. I took my son with me for a drive because, isolation can be tough on teenagers too. All he did was sit in the car and read the book or just hang out. And we talked. But yeah, that was the way that I got the foods. There was no choice. I guess one of the difficulties for me was that if I got stopped by the police, would that be classified as essential grocery items? And to them, to me, it absolutely was. There was always the hope that they weren't going to give me a fine for going and getting these items. So yeah, it was a bit more fraught with danger this year.
For many Orthodox Jews, it would be essential.
Absolutely.
Those items, and essential that they gathered as much as they could.
But they would all be living in that area and not travelling so far from home. One of the issues police are looking at is that you don't travel too far from home during this COVID-19 pandemic. The idea of spreading beyond your community or bringing something back into your community people are really aware of that, especially when we're living in regional Victoria. We have such a low incidence of cases. The more people travel to and from Melbourne, the more chance we're going to be bringing something back into the rural community here or the regional community here that would not normally be. And I was highly, highly aware of that, which is why I made the arrangements with my friend to do contactless delivery and have as little outside contact in Melbourne as I possibly could so that I could not bring anything back to Melbourne that other than my lovely religious items that, kosher cultural items that I needed. So, yeah.
So for traditional Christian churches, there are things called holy days of obligation where you're expected to go and receive Holy Communion, and that mainly is Christmas and Easter. Are there such days within the Jewish faith?
There are 8 high holy days in which you are expected to be in a minyan, which is a minimum of 10 religious people praying together to celebrate these days. I don't know if you read on the news yesterday, there was police were made aware of a gathering of more than 10 people in a religious setting above a supermarket in East St Kilda. And the person who resides in that place was fined $1,652 for having that gathering. The police are also ascertaining whether or not everyone else should also be fined. Unfortunately, there are people in the Jewish community who are doing the wrong thing, and that is gathering still. We can find other ways of connecting like this. Having a minyan can be done online just as much as anything else. And I honestly think that the need to gather is the need to keep us safe outweighs the need to gather in these religious circumstances. If people do the wrong thing, they should absolutely be fined for it. It's a matter of public.
The exhortation to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, and for many strict Orthodox Jews in the St Kilda area, they keep their kosher kitchens. They don't work. I understand some of them have electric ovens that they set the day before, so they don't actually physically have to turn the oven on. How does using social media and digital recording, Zoom meetings and things like that, is that seen as work, or do you think there's a dispensation? And the Pope's given a dispensation for Christians not to attend Holy Communion. Is there any dispensation being given by the Chief Rabbi?
Yeah, one of the things that we have in the Jewish faith is what's called a Shabbos goy. It's someone who flicks on the light switch for you, but you don't ask them to do it; they just know to do it. It's if you can't specifically ask someone to do it, but if you prearrange something and they happen to come into your home and they set it up, and you're standing there in front of a social media Zoom meeting like this, and it's all been done for you, then you are no longer responsible for what happens in front of you. It's like the traffic lights will change, but you're not to press the button for the walk button. But the traffic lights will change and you're still allowed to walk across the street, but you're not allowed to make the button push to happen. If someone else pushes it, that's okay, but you're not allowed to do it. So in terms of social media, you could absolutely employ someone from outside of the faith to come in and set up this type of environment to create the minyan. There really is very, very little excuse for physically connecting in the way that this group did in East St Kilda 2 nights ago. I honestly believe that there are other ways. It's just thinking outside the box. This is a new normal for us. We're all adjusting. Every faith had to adjust.
What was that name again of the person who the light switcher on?
Goy. So it's a non-Jewish person who comes in on the Sabbath and helps out with doing the things that you can't do. So, like flicking the light switch or turning the cholent on or turning, doing things that you're not allowed to do. We used to have one, so that it was my sports teacher at school camps. She was not Jewish, so she would do all the things around the camp on the Sabbath from the Friday night to the Saturday night to make sure that everything, but again, she knew the rules. We weren't allowed to tell her what to do. She just knew what to do.
That's good. So how are you spending the rest of this Passover?
Connecting with my family that I live with. We're doing some planting. The weather holds out. We're going to do some gardening. As I said, I celebrate both Easter and Passover now. So tomorrow is going to be chocolate making day. My son and I usually make chocolates. Each year we create a new flavour. We've done pumpkin spice balls coated in chocolate. One year it's for me, culturally, I think the connection that we all have in all the different religions is the food. And for me, food is a thing. Many years as a caterer, it's about creating a space in which people can eat and enjoy and feel nourished. So, making these chocolates, usually it's a thing that I would then deliver to friends. I may find a way to do that still, with social distancing, but we'll see how we go. We'll see how many chocolates we actually have the energy to make this year.
You can take a lesson from the Cambridge spies and find something like a dead letter box where you leave something behind a tree and then give them a secret signal to go from there. Look, thanks for that time this morning. I think for this section, we might just hang up here because we're using new technology. We hope it's going to be uploadable without too much of a fuss. But we might have another discussion about your journey. So thanks for taking us through Passover, and great to talk to you this morning.
Lovely to talk with you too, Kevin.